I've been in a sustainability role at Fonterra for about just over 10 years now. Fonterra is the world's largest dairy exporter, I think, and one of the largest processors. It's a New Zealand farmer-owned co-op. We collect milk from 10,000 farms, New Zealand, Australia, and some smaller operations in Asia, particularly Sri Lanka, which is a particularly challenging environment for us right now. But nonetheless, we persist. Those farms, broadly, we don't own those farms. They're third-party contract farms, or we have different arrangements with them, but we don't control them, and that's our footprint. Our footprint is on those farms, right? We've got factories that we process the milk, but 90% of the greenhouse gas emissions, 85% of the water, all of the animal welfare issues, 100% of the animal welfare issues, they all happen on these farms, right? So that's the core part of our sustainability challenge, is the farm story, processing it into product. I mean, we don't make the milk any better, right? We just make sure it doesn't go bad. The milk is as good as it comes to us from the farm, so that's the whole challenge for us. So I'm General Manager for our Asia Pacific region, which is really sort of Australia, New Zealand, parts of New Zealand, and sort of Southeast Asia. There's a little bit into that sort of southern India, Indian subcontinent, Sri Lanka, but excludes China. We have a separate business unit in China. It's a big part of our business. And we're very focused on, we've moved, I think, in the 10 years that I've been with Fonterra, from sustainability being a risk that we've sort of just got to cover off and handle okay, to being a commercial opportunity that we see there is a point of difference, there is a commercial gain to be had here, and we're out to get it, right? And I think that's what's changed. And that's not arrived by accident, but the world's moved very, very quickly, and we know we've got to run, really, really run to catch up. And so we're in that race right now. It's a pretty exciting sort of place to be in, and not without its challenges as well. I will get to my failures in a minute, but holding a job for 10 years is actually something that I'm quite proud of, because I think I had 10 jobs in the 10 years prior to that, right? And so the form reversed at that point. And I think the opportunity for working at Fonterra we talked about was, what's your why? And I think it's scale, right? So we're big, and we're slow moving, and we're risk averse, and we're hard to deal with at times, and hopefully we've got better, right? But what we bring is the opportunity to make a small change to a farming practice, for example, and multiply that across a number of farms, a large number of farms, and have a large impact, right? So scale is the opportunity. It's like a big canvas. You come to work and you go, right, it's a really big canvas, and it takes a lot of paint to fill it all in, but there's lots to go, and it's a lot of fun, and you're not going to run out of canvas. And so I see that as sort of the artistic piece of what you do here. I, prior to that, worked in Victorian government for a long time, for 10 years, just over 10 years, and really stable, reasonably interesting sort of work. But and I think one of the best career decisions I made was, I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't do farm work. One of the best career decisions was moving to a rural area, my first job out of university, and living in a rural community and working with farmers for the Victorian government. And I learnt so much in those early years and months about, this is how it works, right? This is just way out of my comfort zone, and probably got called out a bit for being out of my comfort zone, but nonetheless, you sort of get through that, and you do learn a lot when you're out of your comfort zone in those early years. And I encourage you to be in those rural communities and spend as much time as you can sort of living and working and transacting and socialising with the people whose problems that these gentlemen eloquently put, those problems that you're trying to solve is really the key part to that, right? And that lived experience with them is really, really valuable, and can't be undersold. Fonterra has about 20,000 people working for it. I'm in a sustainability team. There's 2 of us in that team. Now, my view is that the other 20,000 actually work for us in the sustainability team here at Fonterra. They just don't all know that yet, right? And so we're working through that. Haven't quite got there yet, but they're on the journey with us, and on that way, we see that we're going to need to partner and collaborate with lots of others outside of us to actually bring us the solutions that we're going to need to drive the change that we're looking for, to drive the change that we know customers want to pay for, and to drive the change that's going to give us greater volumes going to those customers that are wanting to pay for it. And so that's the commercial proposition we've got. In that gap between working in Victorian government, I left the sort of 10 years of sort of stable public service employment, and joined through a friend. I joined a reasonably new environmental startup. Wasn't in agriculture, called Easy Being Green. Easy Being Green was basically a home retrofit thing. We would go around and do light globes, we would do shower heads, and we do it in houses. And doing that, we generate environmental credit certificates and sold them to electricity retailers. It's similar to a scheme in Victoria now called the VEEC scheme. There's lots of copies of that. And so this was over 10 years ago, working for Easy Being Green and doing this. And at its peak, we were doing 3,000 homes a week. And I joined Easy Being Green mostly to help them with their sort of government policy, climate policy, regulatory policy around that. And I didn't know much about that, but they knew even less. So I was quite valuable in that process. And so this 3,000 homes a week, we had 140 people. We had a great big love-in in Sydney at one of the Leagues clubs. It's a weird place, Leagues clubs. Have you ever been part of the Sydney scheme of that? And we joined that, and then there's that little period, well, this was in the time when we had business cards. Has anyone here got a business card? You have business cards, and so you start a job, and there's a period between ordering your business cards and getting them. It's like, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, it's hard copy, it takes mailing, it's all sorts of old technology there to get your business cards. There's a couple of people in the room nodding, that's good to see. So in that 4 to 6 weeks period, waiting for my business cards about my new job, I'd gone home and told my family, my wife and 2 reasonably young toddlers about the fantastic decision I've made to give up this career in the public service that was going to go forever and work for this startup and do 3,000 homes a week. And on the day I got my business cards, the day after that, 140 of us, all of us, got redundancy notices. We're out of business, right? It's all over. 140 into voluntary administration. And so we went through a 6-week period where the Court of Mentor they were, the well-known sort of auditors and very well-known now. And in that 6 weeks period where we had literally a very small team of us trying to engineer our way out of the voluntary administration and into something that would actually work and be a commercial ongoing operation. There was a very small team of us, and I was part of that team of 5 or 6 of us. And I learnt more about business, I learnt more about life, I learnt more about relationships in that 6-week period than probably anywhere else in that 6 weeks period. It was, it's quite sort of breathtaking sort of what it was. It was pretty long days actually, a couple of them. But nonetheless, we got to a point where that was it, and the company wound up, the assets went off, someone bought the brand, the brand's still going, and good luck to them, and congratulations if any of you are still working for them. I think it's a fantastic effort. But the process of winding up a business of 140 employees and another couple of hundred contractors who are working for us, and pretty well working for us full time, is a really, really disruptive process, really, really disruptive, but you'll learn a lot. And I think none of us at the time we really valued the learning piece. And I think my failure in that, it was all, that in itself sort of a bit of a failure, but you learn from that. The big failure though was I was in our Melbourne office. There was only 4 of us working in the Melbourne office and everyone else was in Sydney, and the CEO at the time, and he was the owner essentially, and put a lot of money in, most of it his own, put a lot of money in, and he was doing his conference call sort of telling us, look, it's all over, right, the administration's coming, and thanks for all your help, and it all went quiet. And I'm in the Melbourne office, there's 4 of us there, and I was like, Paul, we can't hear, Paul. There's a line's got dropped out. Can someone fix the phone? This is really important stuff, we've got to know it. And someone goes, he's crying, don't do anything. So I thought, okay, so we just sat on mute in Melbourne for the rest of the conversation. We thought, well, let's just leave it at that. So it wasn't really a career-limiting move because we'd got the redundancy notice the day before. So it was sort of like, what have you got to lose here, right? So off we went. I've got plenty of other sort of career clangers in that process, but having a company go under that's got lots of energy and assets and do that, and we went under because we did pretty dumb things. I had a really, really good idea and had no idea about business and risk management, right? So it was just really, really energised, passionate, smart people that didn't know anything about how to trade and how to transact and how to manage risk and how to manage an inventory of certificates and how not to get ripped off. And we were just sort of babes in the woods in that process. So my lesson out of that is, look, partner with people who know what they're doing, right? So partner with people who are in business, because business skills are essential for the success of your effort and your ideas and your wealth, right? So is to get on board with people who understand that and find those people early and stick with them and ask the right questions. And I think that's the sort of stuff. And you guys are onto it. It's not secret about working with others who are not you and who bring insights and different things to that is a really important part with that. We do some innovation now, and we talked before about our environmental impact at Fonterra, and greenhouse gas is the big story, right? So methane from cows, we understand it's a category killer for us potentially, and we have to have solutions for this. And so 3/4 of the emissions associated with your litre of milk come from cow methane. We're working with a number of companies around what are the possible solutions to that, and that includes some feed supplements. And one I just want to profile here is a startup called Sea Forest. And Sea Forest, we grow Asparagopsis, which is a seaweed. They might grow asparagus too, but it won't work. Red seaweed, feed it to cows, really small amounts, gets amazing reductions in methane, right? But how do you take that to a commercial scale? How do you make sure it's safe for animals? How do you make sure it's safe for people? How do you make sure that you can get it at a price that actually makes sense in terms of commercial operations of farms and dairy companies? So we've got this R&D program going on with Sea Forest. We're now into year 3 of that program, and we didn't really know what they were doing, and they didn't really know what they were doing at the same time. But we went on an approach that I think we call just learning by doing, right? So we would just do a very small slice of work and go, right, did that blow us up? It didn't blow us up. Let's do another one, right? And let's just do a bigger slice, and let's just chew a little bit more and just go, right, let's just tick off some of these really basic food safety things, right? Because if food safety doesn't work, it doesn't work for us. And so we just chew little things at a time and progressively go to scale. And the early stage of this, it was almost like it was invisible in Fonterra. No one would want to know about it. The budget was literally what you could put it was around a drinks budget to do the first lot of purchasing around this. And now we're into the whole organisation wants to pile in, and can you hurry up and finish this by Tuesday, please? So success breeds its own success, but you've got to go slowly. You've got to be realistic about what you can achieve, and you've got to build on that success very quickly. And I think that's the lesson we've got now in terms of partnering with Sea Forest. There was no value in us going in and just taking all their energy, their intellectual property, their effort, their knowledge, because they don't survive, we blow them up, and we're nowhere, right? So we've got to do this in a relationship that works for them. If they're successful, there's much more chance that we will be too, right? And this goes for the other partners that we've got in other parts of our business that are doing similar sort of things. But I think that learning by doing approach, don't wait till it's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. And I think we, as a big corporate entity, I think just need to just take that little bit more risk, but do it in a really, really well-managed way. And I think that's the piece for us to do that. And we'll only do that by the sort of things we talked about before, by working with people who are people we know, people we've got relationships with, or referrals from people we trust. And so the networks you've got, the people that you know, and the trust you build is much, much more important than the technology, and much, much more important than the ideas. It's the relationships, right? And you will make money if you do that well. I guarantee it, right? So I think that's where we've got to get to as an agricultural startup. I mean, all the other things that you guys are comfortable, you've got a methodology about it. I love that. I wrote that down. It's like how to do this. But all of those things apply too. But I think just get that trust, right? And that trust comes from being active listening. I love it. That's the sort of thing you got. So I'd rather do Q&A than sort of talk anymore. I'd rather not go through a long list of career failures, including the decimal point I missed in a very early Sea Forest budget that nearly stopped the whole thing, right? It was like, wow, my $10,000 budget needs $110,000. It's like, okay.
Is that cue for me to come up to the... Yeah.
Over to you. Up to you, yeah. We can...
I love to hear about some of the decimal points and stuff, but I do have a few questions that's already come through, and also just conscious of time as well. But I would love to take a peek on that piece of paper of yours. And also, if you don't mind, if we run out of time, do you mind if I ping through some of the questions and perhaps wrap up in a post-event? Cool. All right, so I'm going to be selfish and ask mine first. And this is a burning question that I really want to ask, just coming from a SproutX perspective of seeing how different key players of the sector interact. So noted about partnership with Sea Forest and also SenseEnd Technologies. What I have been seeing in quite a few agri-corporates is there is and this is direct quotes, capacity to innovate. Like, you do not have capacity to innovate and to find these new partnerships that make sense. It's almost like partnerships exist so they can take something off them and create something on the side. Do you have any advice for the corporate employees in this room on how do you make change or create capacity in a very slow, large-sized business pace? A lot to unpack.
I think I've learned that you can get anything you want if you're patient enough, right? And you've just got to actually build all the pieces in these big corporates, right? Because they genuinely do want to do the right thing. They genuinely do want to make the planet better, make money, make their own people happy. They're not really set up to do that very well, but that's what we've inherited. That's the corporate structure that we have. So you go back to the fundamentals. You go back to building relationships, building trust, having role models, you know, and just going, well, what is our North Star? What is our purpose? What's the reason we're here for? And with the right energy, you know, you can, it takes a lot of effort, but when you do get a shift, the shift is multiplied by 10,000 farms, by 20,000 people, right? So that's the payoff, right?
I really love your part about focus on the humans, on the trust. And this is a very vulnerable little love letter to the Bayer team over here. SproutX and Bayer collided around the COVID era. It's like, yeah, we're going to do a lot. Oh, we can't do anything. So it's that kind of moment when we started this, and it's almost like probably there was a year of like, we have a lot of ideas, but that just really didn't eventualize because everyone was pivoting. And but then what has come throughout, even though we don't have, this is our KPI, this is our goal, but Chris was so good with just spending time on interviews, and I'll ping something to Nina. It's just like, yeah, let's get it done. This is how we can work. And it's just like, it's almost sort of like you so focus on that human and you just would get to that point together anyway, as opposed to, yeah, trying to, I got to carve out some space so then I can innovate. I do have another query for you on challenges in exporting Fonterra's product to new market like APAC. So any fumbles there, and how did you adapt?
Plenty of fumbles, right? So we're a global business, and if you Google us, you'll read about a lot of those, right? So I don't need to repeat any of them; they're all accessible to you. I think what we fail to do is to, well, we're not fail to do, but what we don't put enough effort into is to really understanding the markets themselves, right? So our most successful export markets now are where we've had joint venture partners that have gone well. So we will go into a joint venture partner where, you know, we're the #1 dairy company in Sri Lanka by such a long way, it's amazing. But that's because we had a really lucky joint venture partnership 50 years ago, right? And from that we've built, you know, a brand, we've built an establishment, we've built a rapport. It's a really difficult place to do business, don't get me wrong, right? But a good joint venture partner early really has set us up for there. There are other places where that hasn't happened, and we're not in the market, right? We just can't do it. To build those markets is really hard.
So it's also kind of like when people say hire well, you know, like be able to, yeah, to be able to spot a good cookie.
Choose your parents well. Right?
Choose your parents well. Asian background. Anyways, let's move on. So one last question that I thought was interesting, and I'd like to reframe that for the Anon who posed. The Anon asked, what technology would you like to see in the agri-space? I like to reframe that into, with whatever is going on in Fonterra and where you aspire to be at, what is the topmost wish list? And Sansan, take your notepad out. What's your wish list?
I mean, my wish list is around the big sustainability challenges, right? So we don't know. We've got an emissions reduction target of, you know, whatever it is, right? So and we've got a roadmap to get about halfway, right? So we know we can get halfway. We're very reluctant, I think, to sort of say, and we'll buy offsets for the rest. That's not the approach we want here, right? We will look at emissions reductions as far as we can go on this, and I think that will be the defining part of, you know, my time at Fonterra and probably the company's existence, right? If you're a big dairy company and you don't do the emission story properly, then that's probably where we've got to go. I do sort of caution some of the, you know, sequestration and soil carbon pieces as being useful and important, but let's not oversell those as solutions, right? In agriculture, they're part of a very broad bunch of solutions, and we're going to need them all, and we're a decade away from being able to say that we don't need that one, here's the winner, right? So any contribution in that space is welcome. Right?
So it's more like how you use them. It's more like how you use them, as opposed to just take this piece of tool is cool, but where do you, cool. All right, thank you so much for sharing your fumbles with us today, Jack. I will have a few that I'll ping through, but we do. Let's put our hands together for Jack. Thank you very much. And yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's awesome to see Bayer supporting this. Thank you to SproutX for inviting me. Sometimes you feel like the token farmer in the room, but obviously in an ag tech conversation it's quite important to have us here. So thank you again for having me. So my name is Jen Medway. I'm a 5th generation farmer from Gunning in New South Wales, so I'm already got a strike against my name for being from New South Wales. The second strike, although it's working in this case, I had a fumble. I ripped this out of my notebook, and I accidentally ripped a bit of it. So I've seen everyone with their cheat sheet, so apologies for that. So we have 20,000 sheep. I guess if you think about having 20,000 animals that rely on you, and it's a huge responsibility, we take it extremely seriously. So from our point of view, it is really important. Hearing all these excellent ag tech things that are happening for us is super exciting, because it makes the complexity that we've talked about is real. I'm here to say that I live it every day. One of the things, though, to comment on is that we don't think it's complex. And one of the things I would also say that I would say is a bit of a fumble is that you'll ask any farmer, how did you make that decision? How did you go about that? They will say it's a gut feel. That gut feel often to city dwellers seems ridiculous. It is absolutely built on a huge amount of information. We study the seasons. We know what our soil looks like. We know what a good animal looks like. We know when it's in trouble. We know when it's not going to water. We know all these things. So when a farmer says, I don't know, I just know, the answer is that's real. So please, I would say as an ag tech community, please don't underestimate the fact that that type of information is almost make or break in terms of it. The challenge is, and we heard a great example from Paul before, is it's really hard to pass on. So I'll just sort of go back to my script. In terms of our ag tech journey, I said to my husband before I came here today, are we ag tech adopters? And he goes, no. I was like, oh, okay, great. And then I said, that's all, because we've spent about $150,000 just in the last year alone on ag tech. And he's like, yeah, just help me do things differently. And I said, okay, awesome. So that's going to be a fun opener for my conversation this afternoon or tonight. So a couple of things, though, I would like to just point out early on. So how did it start? So we got involved in the ag tech conversation through AgriFutures, and that's already been pointed out by Paul. We did jump on that bandwagon, and it's exciting to see Jane here today, who's taking up the role of Manager of National Rural Issues. And really, as much as a vocag is an important, there is lots of stuff happening in this space. So much so that I thought, well, I'm in AgriFutures, I should know what's happening in ag tech, and I was really working quite closely with the Evoke team, working across a whole heap of things that were going on at the time. So I, back in the day, I thought, well, I better find out what I can do on our property, and I looked up initially KPMG, you might remember, used to develop that map, and it was probably the first opportunity to really understand what was happening and map and understand what the system looked like. I Googled almost every single thing on there, and I couldn't actually find a huge amount there was a lot of stuff on there, but it didn't actually help me make money, there was a lot of things that made it easier or more efficient, but it didn't actually, I wasn't sort of looking at things that really was a game changer for what we were trying to do at the time. Then AgriTech Finder came along, you might know, from Food Agility, which is great. And I thought, brilliant, it's now not only just giving me a map, it's actually telling me for livestock what I can do. This is awesome, it's just going to spit the answer out. And really I was sort of, again, interrogated the information on that database, and I'm going to say for livestock there's a gap. There's an absolute gap in livestock. So we have, for anyone that knows soils, we're basalt and granite. I should put a little hand up for what that means. It means we can't crop. That's what that means. So we have about 9,000 acres of brilliant country and can't put a plough through it very easily without breaking a heap of discs. So basically we're then confined to what that looks like from a livestock perspective. I got really excited. I thought to myself, whoa, here's a ripper, here's a drench gun. We do EIDs, we track each individual animal. We're quite advanced on that space. We actually don't look at mob-based systems. We look at the individual animals, 20,000 of them, and we sort of treat them as individuals and try and look at them in what they actually need. What did that mean, though? It meant that it was awesome. We could actually deliver a drench okay, it may not mean much in Melbourne, but we could deliver the right amount of drench, the right amount of animal, rather than saying, what's the average here? Let's figure out what we need. And I think it was Chris in your example gave a really good illuminator. We can only buy drench in 20-litre drums. That's about 1,000 to 1,100 sheep per drum that we're using that we have to buy in bulk to then go. So if I save a couple of hundred meals either way, either up or down, we actually have still had to buy the whole drench container. Not only that, it gets worse, and exactly, Chris, honestly, I shouldn't even be up here. I just agree with Chris and Paul, in that we can't anticipate that. Our local CRT bloke can't even get product at the moment from China. How are we going? We want to get that, and we want to get it now. So much so that I'll give you an example. In that, as a company that shut down for long-acting drench, and so we ended up buying 4,000 capsules at about a cost of about 16 grand because they were shutting up shop. So whether or not I give a little bit less of a dose to one or not is probably not going to be the game changer that I would need to buy that $30,000 new drench gun that connected with our EIDs that cost $5,000 or $6,000 per drop, which is a year of lambs, to put in there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that some of these things, there's some really practical reasons why things fumble. Whether or not where your risk profile is to whether or not those fumbles seem big or little. Okay, I digress. So a couple of points I came up with, I've already covered one. There isn't a lot for livestock. I'm sorry, there is just not a lot out there for livestock. I got really excited talking to Liam. You'll hear Liam's name mentioned a couple of times. I met him about half an hour ago, and he's given me a lot of information. And he's obviously, there's a lot of people doing stuff in cropping. So if anyone that's interested, there isn't a lot out there for livestock. One of the other things that I think is a bit of a furphy, and I think actually Maxi might have mentioned it, is that if you're purely digital without connecting to the physical system, your ROI is higher. So your ROI that you need to demonstrate to a producer to jump over that curve into buying is higher, in my view. I can't comment on every farmer. But basically what I mean there is there are a lot of solutions. I will 100% agree back with Chris. Chris, you and I we're in sync. There's a lot of duplication in that space. And I genuinely think that if you're just going to help people do a little bit better, capture a little bit better, do a cloud storage system, a bit of a software to help put it together, I genuinely think the ROI is higher than it is if you then link it back to a system. And my fumble coming up will help illuminate that a little bit further. My point 3 is that I often see ag tech providers who focus so solely on their solution that I don't know that they look left, right, up and down. What I mean by that is that when we approach an ag tech solution, when you just do it on its own, it just doesn't always have as much impact for us on the ground. So it means a huge amount for you guys. If you're a developer, it absolutely, you can see how that is just I can't understand why they're not buying it. From our perspective, we're like, it doesn't fit in here. How is that mixing with that one? If I did 2 or 3 things together, that would work. But there's no information. There is a gap in anyone trying to put that puzzle together. So if you're looking at us going, God, they're just stupid, they don't get what I mean, turn around and have a look at your solution and say, is that actually the problem here? And the answer is may or may not be. So before I launch into our fumble, which is the reason why Maxi got me here, there's a couple of bumper stickers that I thought I would share, and something that really resonated with me pretty early on when I was on this ag tech journey, and I hope it does to you too. And it's cut off, so I hope I get it right. A new piece of technology won't make a farmer better. So let's just reflect on that for a second. A new piece of technology will not just in itself make a farmer better. It is how do I keep... another good example, we had I won't give the exact specifics of it, but in the middle of summer we had a whole heap of animals that had... anyway, what do you call it when your lungs... I should ask Paul. Anyway, we lost a whole bit, like a few sheep, because they literally had this disease. You're like, how the hell did they get that? Good seasons actually bring out more drama and more disease than bad seasons. So I guess what I'm saying there is just to keep that in mind in terms of, silver bullets are great. Ag tech is an amazing part of that, but it's just an add-on for the people that are on the land doing stuff. It's just a better way of doing things. Okay, my last point on that front, before I jump into our fumble, was that you might have obviously heard in business, cash is king. Not so much now when no one accepts cash, but basically cash is king. In the ag tech world, my view is that problem is king. So we often hear, and I think it is definitely changing, but the fact that people jump to solution and say, why aren't they grabbing this? Why aren't they doing something is a real challenge. And I think problem is king, and then ROI is the next step of that. Right, now to the bit where we bug it up, which thank you so much, Maxi, for being able to highlight this. So back in the day, as I mentioned, we started to get into the ag tech space in terms of what we could do. And really, one of the things we really wanted to do was accelerate our genetic gain. Now, for a lot of you, that won't make sense, but basically we wanted to move our sheep quality from here to here really quickly. And there's lots of ways we could do that through some traditional industry avenues, but we wanted to say, well, what can ag tech help us to do? The first thing it said was, please go and create a whole heap of, get a whole heap of data. So we just willy-nilly went out, got a whole heap of data. I'll tell you the people, sorry, I had to write this down just to capture how many people or costs or organisations were involved. So we had data analysts, we had the tech supplier, we spent about $50,000 on tech. We had digital clouds, we had digital software, we had the sheep consultants, we had the RDCs involved in the ASBVs. I'm giving you a whole heap of acronyms, don't worry about that, it's not important. But basically, we had a whole heap of people involved in a system to try and help us achieve this thing that worked with ag tech, and the answer was it was too complicated. None of it talked, no one understood it. We captured too much data, we didn't do anything with it. I would say we wasted between $80,000 and $100,000. Now, for some farmers, that's probably not enough, but for a mid-tier farmer, that's a heap to wash away. I mean, imagine what you could do in your lives with 80 to 100,000. That doesn't change because we're farmers. That's a lot of money. So what happened there? So we didn't understand the problem well enough. Even I'm saying this to you, like, just understand the problem. It's easy. It's not. We didn't understand the problem. We didn't understand the change we were trying to make, and then we couldn't then work backwards. We started from a midway point of saying data is the key. We just need to collect data and everything will fall into place. It didn't. It didn't at all. And basically we captured a huge amount of data at a huge amount of cost and energy. And to be honest, our shearers were not happy after the however many day. We sheared for 8 weeks with 6 shearers. It was a lot of energy to consume from there's 12 people in a shed plus the 4 people we had in that shed. Can you multiply that out by how annoying that was? And basically it didn't work because we didn't understand the problem well enough. There was a couple of other things. Nothing linked up. Nothing linked. So we would capture data that we'd have to drag into an Excel spreadsheet from the consultant that would have to go back out to the data software guys. So I couldn't manipulate anything. I'm an economics, I've got an economics degree. I love to own my own, I love to get in there and play. I couldn't do anything because I had all these people. I was like the 6th hand that had it by that stage, and I couldn't do anything with it. I'm happy to say, I'm not happy to say, we had a company that held the data in there. They then said to us, the functionality is coming. I was like, oh, that's so helpful. So we had to have another software on top of that. So then we were trying to manipulate between the systems to say that mob was this, back to this software with the consult. Oh my God. Anyway, I think you're getting the picture. It was a fail. It was a big fat fail. Not because, and look, to be honest, we didn't walk away from it. We still felt the premise is right. So Breed Elite, who some of you may have heard, is a bit more of a whole of system thinking. And what it said before, and one of the opportunities I'll talk about in a second, is that it connected the ag tech with the physical. It connected the digital with the physical. And suddenly they were able to it was like a through system. And that made the difference for our business. Right, just a couple of things I learnt from that, and opportunities. So I didn't want to focus on end on a negative, so just heads up, just a couple of last points. The opportunities going forward. So I think there's a big opportunity to look at the things we're currently doing to make them smarter. So there's a little bit, this is where Liam comes in. So Liam's grabbed something that is already existing and said, how can we make it smarter? That's a winner because we already know what that works. We already know what it does. It's obviously there for a reason. We would have kicked it out long ago if it wasn't working. My point is, I'll give you an example. One of the things I toyed with doing some ag tech development over was a smart floodgate. And now, how sexy is that? Does anyone even know what a floodgate is? Does anyone know what a floodgate is? It's the most unsexy thing you'll ever come across. It's basically when you've got, so we were on the Lachlan River, we've got a heap of tributaries going in there, we've got about 30 floodgates. Any time we get a lot of rain, it just wipes out fences. Is this making sense to anyone? Sorry if it's not. We spend weeks, months resolving that. Now, well, how do we resolve that? Every time we roll back around, we fix the floodgate, we put it back, and then hope it doesn't rain for a little while. It's horrific. It's a lot. It's a lot of wasted energy and time. So I've kind of got this idea originally. I was like, well, why don't we make it smart? So first of all, finding them. We've got to go around a whole place. We've got 9,000 acres. Going around every floodgate, there's 30 of them from here to here. Can't we just go and see it somehow or get a sense that tells me it's let go? Second of all, is there not some way that we could get, more lift-up technology that we see in other places? Why is that not there? Waratah's got a bit of a something. Sorry if there's any Waratah people here or anything to do with them. It's a bit of a non-effort in terms of doing that. So I guess my example there is to say it's great to build something brand spanking new. That's where a lot of the excitement is in ag tech, but don't overlook the opportunity to just do things we're doing better. Hence the fly strike bit. Sexy doesn't always sell, and it's probably related to the other one. So some of the mundane, everyday jobs, are things that actually are sellers. They're things that we can kind of cut out of our system, and that's really important. The other thing, and I think actually, I'm not sure if it was Paul or Chris that mentioned it, end-to-end systems are unusual, but we're finding this one-off technology is frustrating for producers. It's like it's going to solve one little problem. Oh, what's the ROI for that? If we could actually bite off parts of our production system. I'm talking, you don't have to do the whole production system, that is just not possible. But if you think about in your business and you look at your solution, can I pivot it just a little bit to include a couple of extra things to make more sense for a producer? Because at the moment, often ag tech people come and go, I've got this great new collar, I've got this, and it's solving one problem, or it's not even maybe solving it. If they look at more the little chunks of production systems, you've got a little bit higher ROI and a bit more leverage to say, look, we'll take that process for you. We'll take that bit of the process and help you out with it, rather than I'm just going to do that little bit here, and we go, awesome. Not to say that's not important. So my facials probably shouldn't reflect what I'm actually thinking on that front. I just think don't overlook it, and don't be so closed in the mind of it to think that there's not those opportunities outside, because it doesn't often take much. I'm excited to see all the carbon, the ESG, the sustainability talk. You might have heard me at the beginning saying, looking after our animals is our number one thing. People just think farmers just willy-nilly go and do whatever. We don't. We're very focused on sustainability. We're very focused on our animal welfare and things that help us do that, and I'm extremely excited. That's a huge opportunity in my eyes, but don't forget the farmer in all that conversation. In the program that Jane's going to be involved in when she joins AgriFutures, we spent about $2.5 million on carbon programs. It's purely to try and but we weren't focused on pushing the carbon conversation forward. We were focused on trying to catch the farmer up into that conversation. So often we get this, great new carbon opportunities to do things differently, but don't overlook the fact you need to bring the farmer on that journey. Because if you just turn up at the other end of it and say, we've got it, we've solved it, the answer is we go, oh, awesome, I'm just going to go plant some trees over here. The last thing I would say is this idea of the not looking for the silver bullet, as in everything needs to revolve around, that idea of seamless transition or seamless integration into what's happening. I think the world has changed. So I think the ag tech world has as well. So if you're looking at your business as, I'm going to solve everything, the answer is you probably won't. And I mean that in a really generic way. So I might leave it there on those couple of points. But thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Maxie.
That's my cue. Yes.
I could talk forever, so I was like, Maxie, wind me up.
No, I'm kind of like selfishly, it's like, because I know the founders behind me are like, writing notes down. And you're pretty much the representative for farmers today. I'm getting a lot of queries about founders trying to validate their products right now. So this first one from Jack that I really like, which also echoes a very recent experience with the SproutX team when we went off to Ellen Bank Smart Farm. And if any one of you haven't been yet, the government is doing 5 smart farms around the state. and they all have a area of focus. So either it's dairy, hort, whatnot, and then in every of these farms, they will have different stations of, say, Alien Banks Farm. This one is about tracking methane produced, and this one is about their feed, and this one is using drone or satellite data to look at crops. Anyways, long story short, was going through all the station, and there's this one very jaded dairy farmer that's like really giving the researchers very hard questions, which is understandable because of everything that dairy farmers have been going through. Jack's question is for Jen: do farmers have a limit in the amount of bandwidth and time to consider more ideas given everything that's going on? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, a very answer is yes. As I said before, we're not sitting around going, please come and solve my problems. We're doing all right, we're doing well, we've got a lot of things going on. The answer is absolutely, it's pretty small for some in terms of what they're willing to look on. And look, the end of the day, things like digital literacy, the ability, capital available for these types of things is small. It's competing against. If I look at my farm, there's probably 10 key things at any one time I could do to increase our productivity. And I'm loving what Paul said around the nutrition per sustainability unit. I do think at the end of the day, it's competing in amongst a whole heap of things. So whether it's time, capital, interest, bandwidth, whatever it is, it's absolutely in the mix. It is not always at the top of that list.
This second one sort of follows on to the other side. So for agtech developers, Jen, do you have any suggestions on how to get agtech developers engaged with farmers earlier to make sure their solution is meaningful and provides an ROI?
Oh, this one's a tricky one, and I'm going to go back to Liam again. The first question I asked Liam when he said he's actually got his product about to be in the field, I said, how the bloody hell, I didn't use that bit, how did you get farmers? And the answer is he got one, and then that person put them onto another one and another one and another one. Farmers, and this is something you'll have heard a million times, we're used to just buying off the shelf solutions. We want it done, we don't have time. I have worked with, there's often a bad experience. I worked with a company, again, I won't say who it is. They were developing a new drench gun, and it happened to be a orange drench. The marketing department decided the best thing they could do was have an orange drench gun. The bowl was orange, everything was orange. And they did a lot of work. They came out to our farm and we couldn't tell what the dose rate was because everything was in orange and the drench was orange. So my example there is to say that, like, we got sheep in, we did. So there's been I think the ag tech industry now may be sort of still maybe suffering a little bit from some of those early ones where they went a little bit too early to the farmer, and then it was a challenge to actually then they've had a bad experience or whatever it might have been. The answer is just keep trying, because if you don't have that engagement, you won't get that product validation, which is so needed. So challenging, but hard to overcome. I'm not gonna lie.
I do have to say though, like, this is definitely an industry where yes, the barriers and stakes and risks are higher, but the community is so dead loyal. Like, once you enter, word of mouth is key. And may I say, just probably a little bit far off, a little bit of a stretch, but I would say that this is 101 when you try to build community, right? When you try to build connection with someone from a different culture, a different career background, or not, you want to really understand, and you don't show up and say, teach me everything, how do I be more inclusive, right? You want to do your homework, you want to understand what they've been through, boots on grounds, and live a day of what they have lived as well. So that's definitely the recommendation that we will give for anyone looking to understand, like truly understand them.
If someone said to me, how do you do farming? Do you know what I mean? Do your homework first.
Google.
Makes a big difference.
Google. There's a website called Let Me Google That For You. It's very helpful. I just wanted to wrap. There's definitely still a few, but also conscious of time as well. But I do want to wrap on a note on, what is your wish list?
My wish list. My wish list is around, right this second, this minute, this day, is around sustainability. We are all wanting to do this. We don't know how to do it. Can I be as honest as that? There is a real interest in the industry to do something. We know we should be doing some more. We're doing a lot. We don't know how to say it. We don't know how to measure it. We don't know some of the cool technology that's out there to help us. this very moment is where my head is at.
And to follow on to this conversation offline after this event, just because we're going to wrap, there is a huge debate behind the term sustainable ag as well. But click like and press the subscribe button to SproutX to tune in more. And we have the wonderful Jen Medway joining us on our SproutX mentor crew. Thank you so much. So come meet, say hi, join their program. You'll get a lot more chances to come and tickle Jane's wonderful brain. So thank you very much, Jen, for your time with us.